call the roll.
Councilman Stolberg.
Here.
Councilman Stone.
Here.
Councilman Kaufman.
Here.
Councilman Bloomberg.
Here.
Councilman Noble.
Here.
Councilman Halman. Mayor Rotering.
Here, we have a quorum. Let's all join together for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the special city council meeting held July 13th, 2020?
So moved.
Second.
Will the clerk please call those votes?
Councilman Stolberg.
Aye.
Councilwoman Stone.
Aye.
Councilman Kaufman.
Aye.
Councilman Bloomberg.
Aye.
Councilman Noble.
Aye.
Mayor Rotering.
Aye, 6 ayes and no nays, and the minutes are approved. May I have a motion to approve the warrant list?
Mayor, before we proceed, do you want just a quick statement for the record on our basis for proceeding virtually?
Sure.
So we've done this at every meeting, but just in case somebody's new to our meetings, we are proceeding in a virtual format with no members of the public body present at the City Hall because of the pandemic that currently exists, and a determination by the mayor that the City Hall is not conducive for an in-person meeting. Nevertheless, the City Hall is open for those members of the public that would like to attend. The city manager is present at City Hall, and all other procedures for this meeting have been followed in accordance with the recently amended Illinois Open Meetings Act.
Much appreciated. Thank you, Council. Okay, continuing on with our agenda, I'm seeking approval of the warrant list. I recognize that one, possibly two, may be recusing pursuant to a specific item.
Motion to approve, Mayor. Second.
And Mayor, if I can.
Councilman Kaufman.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I need to recuse myself from warrant item 293654 because it involves a grant to SEPA and my wife is an employee of SEPA. So for that, I'll recuse myself.
Okay. And Councilwoman Stone, do you need to recuse, or do you feel that you do not need to?
I apparently don't need to anymore because I've been appointed by you to the board of SEPA.
That's correct, Mayor.
Okay. Okay.
Um,
So we're seeking a motion to approve the warrant.
However,
Go ahead.
yeah, let's just talk about how you're going to do this, Mayor. I think Councilman Kaufman, you should vote on all warrants other than the one he asked. He should actually pull that. He can vote on the main motion and then turn off or step out of the virtual meeting for the vote that would be on the separate line item.
So we have a motion, we have a second on the complete warrant list, but I'm seeking amendment of those motions to exclude item 293654. The first movement, okay, and the seconder, okay. So we have a motion, we have a second. Will the clerk call the vote on those items?
Councilman Stolberg. Councilwoman Stone.
Aye.
Councilman Kaufman.
Aye.
Councilman Bloomberg.
Aye.
Councilman Noble. Mayor Rotering.
Aye, I think we lost Councilman Noble, so I'm going to say 5-0 on approval of the warrant list, excluding that item. Councilman Noble is, nope, she's gone and she's back, and she's gone again. So we'll continue.
No, I'm here. I'm totally here.
Okay.
I'm here. Aye.
You're an aye. All right, 6 ayes, no nays. Councilman Kaufman has now recused himself, and I'm seeking a motion to approve item 293654 on the warrant list.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Will the clerk please call that vote?
Councilman Stolberg.
Aye.
Councilwoman Stone.
Aye.
Councilman Bloomberg.
Aye.
Councilman Noble. Mayor Rotering.
Aye. That's 5 ayes, no nays, and item 293654 has been approved. And hopefully Councilman Kaufman will return momentarily. We will continue on with the report of the mayor. And I ask that we all, okay. I ask that we all keep Jacob Blake and his family in our thoughts and in our prayers. And I want to share with everybody that this Wednesday, August 26th, marks Women's Equality Day and the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment, which prohibited states from denying individuals the right to vote on the basis of sex. From Abigail Adams' appeal to her husband to remember the ladies, to Harriet Tubman's Underground Railroad to freedom, which included stops right here in Lake County, women have played a vital role in writing the history of our country. Yet for over 140 years of our history, women were excluded from the democratic process. They had helped build, improve, and sustain. The successful passage and ratification of the 19th Amendment was the result of decades of work by various activist groups. And I urge you to look into the details pertaining to that struggle. It was intense, it was at times violent, and people need to recognize that there has been a history in this country of disenfranchisement and efforts by others to ensure equal opportunity to have the vote. Success was the product of collaboration between leaders with diverse political beliefs such as Alice Paul, Carrie Chapman Catt, and Ida B. Wells, who led their organizations to work together to achieve a common goal. It's also imperative to mention that while the passage of the 19th Amendment enfranchised American women, women of color were often still excluded from exercising the right to vote through state laws and policies that were deliberately enacted to deny them this right. Through poll taxes, intimidation, and other unfair practices, voting access remained obstructed for many voters of color, both male and female, for decades thereafter, and to this day we have challenges. The 19th Amendment's ratification was a milestone for women's equality, but it was not the end of the fight for suffrage. This anniversary is a reminder of the importance of the right to vote and upholding the democratic principles on which our country was founded. For voter registration and 2020 general election information, please visit the city's website, cityhpil.com, or go to the Lake County Clerk's website. That is where our elections are administered. I want to raise some issues regarding back to school. And on behalf of the city, we would like to wish all of our students, teachers, administrators, and support staff a productive and safe school year. For those returning to school in person, please be safe for yourself and others so that you can continue to be together. And I want to say thank you to my city council colleagues, City Manager Gita Newkirk, Superintendent Dr. Michael Lubefeld, Superintendent Dr. Bruce Law, Park District Executive Director Brian Romes, and their respective boards and staffs for their consistent, cohesive, and collaborative leadership during this pandemic. As a new year begins, it's a good reminder that we all must commit to taking the necessary precautions to stop the spread of COVID. And I know I sound like a broken record, but it's still here and we still need to take precautions. This pandemic is not over just because people are returning to the classroom. And some students in the community may be physically present, others may be taking classes online. Regardless, we need to continue to follow the 3 W's: wear a face covering, watch your distance, and wash your hands. While unnecessary travel is discouraged if traveling to a state experiencing widespread community transmission, please quarantine for 14 days upon returning home in an effort to prevent the spread of the illness. And we have a list of states on our city website that you can take a look at and see if you should be quarantining. I am on day 8 after driving my children to college in Louisiana. Here I am at my house. These strategies are simple, but they're effective. And as a united community committed to the academic success of our students, each and every one of us must be all in. I also want to urge residents to please be careful when driving through your neighborhoods because students are out and about. Some may be following a hybrid model where they're in school in the morning and home in the afternoon, or vice versa. And they may be walking to and from school at different hours based on their schedules. Others may be remote learning completely and then taking a break and out playing to get some fresh air. That may be their PE class. So please, please, please be careful as you're driving. Drive slowly and be alert for children and for crossing guards. Consistent with all of our meetings, City Manager Newkirk will provide an update on the city's response to the pandemic, and this presentation will be made later this evening at the committee of the whole. That's it for the report of the mayor. Continuing on with our agenda, the next item is business from the public. This is for citizens wishing to be heard on items that we are not having on our agenda this evening. Do we have any business from the public?
We do, Mayor. We have several emails that we'll read into the record, and then consistent with our virtual rules that are posted on the city's website, if there's anyone that has called in and wishes to speak, if you could raise your virtual hand, and then I will call on you after these comments are read. So the first one is from Marietta and Kevin Stevens. It's dated August 24th at 12:15. They write, once again, we would like to bring to your attention to a safety issue in the Ravinia Business District neighborhood. We want to support the Roger Williams restaurant street closure, but do not believe that the resulting traffic changes to the neighborhood have been evaluated. The street of Highland Place is now a thoroughfare for cars, trucks, and the fire engine/ambulance from Ravinia Fire Station. Many cars speed on Highland, a residential street which has walkers and bikers. I have a video showing 18 cars on Highland in the one block between Pleasant and Burton. If on a call, then the fire equipment would have certainly been delayed. The new temporary parking restrictions at Green Bay and Highland Place have helped traffic flow on that corner. There has not been a speed monitor device on Highland Place since early June. Given the number of children in the neighborhood and the constant traffic flow, there is a real risk of an accident. Thank you for attention to this important issue, Marietta and Kevin Stevens. The second email is from Judith and Stephen Marcus, August 23rd, 10:25 a.m. This pertains to the sidewalk installation guidelines. We have lived on University Avenue in Highland Park for over 50 years. Installing sidewalks on University is intrusive to the character of our community and environmentally unsound. Why would the city want to destroy the beauty of an entire neighborhood and replace trees and grass with concrete? In order to install sidewalks, the city would have to tear down trees, landscaping, light posts, etc. Many of these beautiful trees have been there since the area was developed approximately 65 years ago. There are trees that have been planted by the city. These trees are environmentally important. Also, people's front lawns would be destroyed. A sidewalk on University Avenue was recently proposed and was defeated by the residents. The residents have indicated they do not want sidewalks. The city sent a letter to the affected residents on January 28, 2020, stating there was a lack of support for sidewalks on University Avenue and no new request would be considered for 3 years. Honor your commitment. The next email is from Marla Portman. I'm just opening up the attachment. She writes, I'm appalled by the proposed treatment of non-responses in the proposed guideline. Just a side note, this pertains to the sidewalk guideline. She writes, the proposal states that a non-response by any affected property owner will be considered a quote, yes vote. What theory compels the city to believe this is a good and proper democratic principle? Why is this approach more appropriate than considering non-responses a quote, no vote? Imagine if any political election treated non-voters as presumptively for or against a candidate. Chaos would ensue. Frankly, non-responses should not factor in any way into the results. This element in the proposed guideline gives the appearance that council has an agenda and is willing to unfairly tip the scales of justice in its favor, and this element should be rejected. And then Mark Portman, also on Thursday, the 20th, he has comments that would be like to read into the record. He writes, I find the city's proposed new sidewalk guideline, parentheses, curiously no longer a policy, close parentheses, possibly the most perverse, disingenuous, and cynical example of bad governance I've seen in a long time. The policy is seriously flawed. Why does the city encourage citizen involvement while ultimately and universally retaining the right to control the fate of any such project? If citizens wish to have sidewalks, but the council decides it does not, or likewise, if citizens do not want sidewalks, but the council decides it does, in both cases, the voices of citizens are ignored. So why even have a guideline? Frankly, the council is exposing itself to harsh criticism if they adopt this portion in the guideline. Furthermore, I strongly object to exempting plans developed by Bike Walk HP 2030 and Move HP from the guideline. If council intends to act on plans developed by these two committees, why not solicit community opinion, especially from impacted property owners? Finally, regarding the recently defeated University Hyacinth Hill Initiative, parentheses, regarding January 28th, 2020, letter from Assistant Director Cardiff, the city states, quote, due to lack of support, city will not consider a new request until a 3-year period has expired, end quote. We expect the city to honor that commitment. And then on Wednesday, August 19th, Jory Houlihan writes, we were trying to get sidewalks on University Avenue. That street is an accident waiting to happen. There's no safe way for kids living on University to walk to school. University is used as a cut through to get to or from Lake Forest. I've come close to being hit when walking my son to school. I've been honked at because I dared share the space with cars. I've been honked at because I slowed down to turn into my own driveway, and then the driver speeds away in a huff. Even during the lockdown, when most people were staying home, I couldn't believe the amount of people driving down University and their speed. We live in a different world than the quote, well, my kids grew up here with no sidewalks and we're just fine, end quote, people. We have cell phones, more distracted driving, more angry drivers, more cars on the road. My poor neighbor has to use a glow-in-the-dark leash and wear a headlamp and reflective workman's vest to walk her dogs at night and still almost been hit. I admit that when we bought our home, we didn't realize the amount of traffic that went through this area and the impact that not having sidewalks would have as a result. If I had known, I wouldn't have moved here. This became a very contentious issue. First, people complained that it would require a ton of trees to be cut down. Then, when that wasn't the case, they changed it to, quote, now we will have to shovel, end quote, heaven forbid. That isn't even a requirement, by the way. People were bullied and harassed. The opponents of putting in the sidewalk spread lies and misinformation to scare people, and nothing was done by the city to correct it. It was awful. It made me want to move. When people are saying their landscaping is more valuable than the lives of people living here, I have to question where I am living. Absolutely no discussion was had or looked into on your end regarding the actual safety of walking down this street. Shouldn't safety be the main priority? I understand why we must apparently wait for someone to get hurt or worse before something is done. Does someone need to die first? Is it that criteria needed for getting a sidewalk put in? Lastly, I'd like to understand why people who don't respond to the form to vote on the issue are automatically, quote, no votes. How do people who don't bother participate in their community get more of a voice than those who do participate? Please explain that to me. Thank you for your time. And then the last one, Mayor, is from Jeff Winton. He writes on Wednesday, the 19th, this is pertaining to Maple Avenue from Sheridan Road to St. John's is badly in need of repair and curbs. The street is deteriorated in several areas. This street is especially in need of curbs because has a lot of parked cars during HPHS events. People seem to think parking a foot so onto the grass on the south side of Maple Avenue is a good idea. So each year, the front yards on the south side of the street lose another few inches of grass. That concludes the written comments we have received. So Mayor, I did talk to Chris Walker. I know that Chris and his partner Jeff were interested in making a comment during this period. I don't see Chris, although there is a Jeff. So if you're okay, I'd like to unmute them in case they have something to say during this time.
That would be great. And I just asked them to be mindful of the 2-minute time limitation for commenting during public comment.
Okay, so I just have a first name, Jeff. So I think if that's Jeff from Ravinia Brewing, you are unmuted right now.
He's actually muted, but he can unmute.
Mm-hmm.
Gita, are you able to unmute him, or can he only unmute
I did
himself?
unmute him. I pressed ask to unmute. I can promote him, but I'm promoting him just so we can see him. Okay, so his on his own device, he has turned off his audio and his video, but I have given him full capability during this meeting.
Okay, so maybe what we'll do is we'll continue on with our scheduled business, and if Jeff is able to jump in. Michelle?
I just got an email from Chris Walker saying that he can't find the link to log in. I'm trying to get him that.
Okay, well, I'm assuming that it's on the agenda page.
It is not that I can see. Perhaps I am missing something. I'm going back to the email that Gita sent us.
Yeah.
So this is Jeff Levin. I have a feeling you think I'm the Jeff from Ravinia Barbecue.
Okay, hi Jeff Levin, thank you.
Okay. My apologies, Jeff.
Assuming that you did not have anything you wanted to say during public comment,
Correct. I'll go
Okay.
mute myself.
but thank you for joining us. We
Thanks,
appreciate it.
Jeff.
You're welcome.
Okay, all right. While we wait to hear back from folks who may want to have comments, we are going to continue on with our scheduled business, and they're also welcome to join us for the committee of the whole conversation, where we will be looking at the Ravinia Business District and other options during the pandemic. Items.
I'm sorry, Mayor. He
Yep.
just logged in.
Okay.
Wait. Okay.
Chris, welcome. You have 2 minutes to share your comments. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, thank you, Mayor. I apologize. I was watching you on 2 different platforms, but one of them was not Zoom. So I appreciate your patience with getting me in. I guess I just wanted to quickly raise two quick points. And the first being to express my partners for the great work that the city has done to really enable restaurants in the Ravinia Business District to be able to survive over this very difficult time, with COVID requiring, really the predominance of outdoor seating. To say that the lifeline that you extended to us, was appreciated. Is I could talk at length about how important that's been to our business. And I guess beyond that, obviously just the environment that's been created, bringing the community together in this unique gathering spot, in Roger Williams, I think is unlike anything that I've seen since I've lived in Highland Park. And I guess I do really appreciate the work that the City Council and Gita and Carolyn and others have done to make that happen. We effectively went from 3 months of very severe losses to really kind of being able to make most of that up in the past 3 months. And I guess that gets me to the other point, just being conscious of time for you, which is the next winter is almost upon us, and to say we are nervous is an understatement. We have the unfortunate situation of being in an environment where indoor dining is uncomfortable for many, many people out there. And I guess the request that I had that I wanted to put forward for consideration is that the council would potentially consider the extension of at least a portion of the closure of Roger Williams beyond this immediate November 2nd deadline. And in fact, to a time in which we would be at a place where indoor dining can return to normal capacity levels. We believe there is an appetite for the community at large to want to participate in new types of outdoor experiences, whether that's in heated tents, with proper ventilation, or coming out for a hot chocolate or a warm beverage around a fire pit. And we really think there's an opportunity for Highland Park to do something similar to what you guys have been able to do in the summer, and to create an amazing experience for the city and the community to come out, as well as others to come in from out of the city to spend their tax dollars here and their money and dine with us locally, in the same way that they have over the summer. So So anyway, I know it's short on time, so I'll stop it with that. But I guess I just wanted to, again, thank you for the support so far. The request would be a consideration of extending the outdoor dining experience beyond November 2nd until we're at a point where we could, where everyone feels comfortable dining indoors again.
Chris, thank you for joining us, and thank you for working so well with our staff in bringing this to the Ravinia Business District. I believe you've been, hello there, I believe you've been in touch with our staff, and options are being considered. And my understanding is that we are, as a city, capital C, trying to work across the various business districts and across the various SSAs and with a variety of businesses to try to do whatever we can to help everybody have as many options as possible. My understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that the closure does continue till November 2nd. And so now it's a matter of what options are there past November 2nd. And I believe some of that is expected to be discussed at the committee of the whole. This is the city council meeting. So I appreciate you sharing that information. Obviously, we're going to have further discussion about that later on, and I'm hopeful that you can stick around and join us while we have that conversation. I'd love your input, and would love to hear more from staff in terms of the options that we're exploring as well. But yeah, thank you. Thank you for the proactiveness and for reaching out to us. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Geeta, any more from business from the public?
No, Mayor.
Okie dokie. Thank you, everybody, for your comments. They are appreciated and will certainly be taken under consideration as we look at additional policies moving forward. Items 1 through 16 have been grouped together for omnibus consideration. We will be holding on item 1, given that there was some confusion and some clarification needed. So I'm now seeking a motion. Hold on, Councilman Bloomberg and Councilman Holloman, I see you. Seeking a motion on items 2 through 16. Councilman Bloomberg.
I wanted to pull number 13, please.
Okay. Councilman Holloman.
Can I pull number 2, please?
Okay, so I'm now seeking a motion on items 3 through 12, 14, 15, and 16.
So moved.
Second.
Any comments or questions on those items? Geeta, do we have any from the public?
No, Mayor.
Okay. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Councilman Stolberg. Councilwoman Stone.
Aye.
Councilman Kaufman.
Aye.
Councilman Bloomberg.
Aye.
Councilman Noble.
Aye.
Councilman Howman.
Aye.
Mayor Rotering.
Aye. 7 ayes and no nays. Items 3 through 12 and 14, 15, and 16 have been approved. Councilman Holloman, you have pulled item 2, a resolution approving an agreement with the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus to host a Greenest Region Corps member.
Yeah, I just wondered if, I think we talked about this pre-COVID, and I just wanted to make sure that now that we're post-COVID and dealing with a series of budget cuts and stuff, that we're not, fighting off another position that could help fund a regular staff position instead of adding a position, just looking for some clarity on that.
Appreciate you raising that question. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor, Councilman Holloman. That's a very good question, and you are absolutely correct. As the council knows, we have been looking at every single line item and trying to save expenses wherever possible. We have evaluated this program. We do believe overall it is beneficial. So 50% of the funding from this position comes through this AmeriCorps program, and then the remaining 50% comes from the sustainability fund, whereas most of our positions are funded through the general fund. So we don't have the ability to say, for example, give us these dollars and we'll apply them to another position and have them just do sustainability projects. That would be contrary to our agreement with that would be set up with the Metro Mayor's Caucus and the Corps. But overall, and we listed just really a snapshot of Daniel Gonzalez, who currently serves in that position, and the work that he's undertaken. And we believe this program is worthwhile.
Okay,
you.
thank you. I appreciate that confirmation.
Is there a motion to approve item 2? Is
I'd like to move to approve it.
there a second?
Second.
Any further comments or questions on item 2? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the vote?
Councilman Stolberg.
Aye.
Councilwoman Stone.
Aye.
Councilman Kaufman.
Aye.
Councilman Bloomberg.
Aye.
Councilman Noble.
Aye.
Councilman
Aye.
Howman. Mayor Rotering.
Aye. 7 ayes and no nays. Item 2 has been approved. Was it item 13, Councilman, that you wanted to pull?
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
Okay, item 13. I'll read it. It's an ordinance amending sections 24.005, 33.1133, and 170.122 of the Highland Park Code of 1968 as amended regarding the city's demolition regulations. And I believe there was an error in removing these. And so this is effort to basically reinstate the law as it had previously been stated.
Yes, and I support that. Unfortunately, late in the process, I noted a little bit of language that I think was intended to be in there, consistent with the policies that are expressed. These allow the termination or cutting off of the demolition delay under certain circumstances, one of which would be if the sellers of a historic property have made reasonable efforts to try to sell the structure and are not able to do so and can demonstrate that, then and they've also been fully educated. We have the opportunity, confirming all that, to adumbrate or terminate the delay. But the issue of selling was to allow them time to sell it to a buyer that would preserve the structure or the historic element of the structure, rather than just time to sell it in general. So that I think that a little bit of additional language to clarify it ought to be in there, but rather than sort of guessing at that, my suggestion would be to not vote on this tonight, have a very brief 5-minute discussion so we can take a look at the language at our next committee of the whole and move on with it at that point. I don't think that would damage anything, or I can briefly explain it now.
Mayor, I've got the proposed changes by Councilman Bloomberg. I can bring them up on the screen if the council would like to see them. Don't want to put you on the spot. Certainly, we can bring it back at a committee of the whole meeting, but if you'd like to see the language, we have it.
Corporation Counsel, you look like you have something to say.
Yeah, I did talk with Councilman Bloomberg this afternoon, and while the language may seem innocuous, this was a very heavily debated and discussed concept. And it was actually my suggestion that instead of laying it on the council tonight, and even myself, and give us some time to think about it, consider it. There is no harm. This is an error by our codifiers. It just didn't get picked up. The law still exists. It is a law. It is an ordinance. It's just not codified into our code book. If Councilman Bloomberg's suggestion, which I recommended to him, is it just give the council an opportunity to discuss this fully on the committee of the whole, if a majority of you are so inclined.
So would that be a motion to postpone to a date uncertain, or how would you have that action taken?
Well, I'd ask the city manager if there's room on the next committee of the whole agenda to have the item be there.
We can make room on the next one, yes.
Okay, so I'm seeking consensus on moving this to a future committee of the whole for further discussion. I'm seeing most heads nodding. Michelle, Kim, are you yes?
I'm nodding yes.
Okay. And Alyssa, I'm going to assume you're just writing along. So, okay.
I'm with you.
Okay, thank you. So the majority is interested in having that conversation at a later date, and potentially at our next committee of the whole, we'll have a better understanding of where we're headed.
And then in any event, we need to get this codified and put on the books.
Right. Okay. So do you want to approve it this evening as is and have that future discussion at the committee of the whole? That's an option, right? We have it on the agenda.
That certainly is an option.
We could take action and then we can
It does
say,
not require any process prior to this. You could just put it on an agenda.
My understanding, I'm sorry. My understanding from speaking to Corporation Counsel is there would not be any harm in continuing it to the committee of the whole, discussing it, and then putting it on a consent agenda that night.
okay. Councilman Holloman.
Could you just explain, Steve, as you were saying that this is already on the books, this is a law. So it sounds like we're just literally copying text from one place to another to codify information that's already exists. And so any change to this information, if I'm wrong, would be a change to our current law, which is what Tony is proposing. Is that correct?
Councilman Holloman, that is a correct statement. I don't want to put words in Councilman Bloomberg's mouth, but he believes that his language is consistent with the intent of the council, and it may have just been omitted in the first place. I haven't had time to consider that, and you haven't had time to consider that.
I'm in favor of, since we've already passed this language and we already have this law on our books, I'm inclined to move forward tonight with approving this, and we'll make that motion so that we can at least have it in place. And what Councilman Bloomberg is asking for is a change to the law, which we should give full consideration to, just like any other.
Councilman Bloomberg and then Councilman Stone.
Yeah, I'm not asking for a change in the law. Respectfully, there was language omitted, which is consistent with what was debated and agreed to. And I just want to make sure that this accurately reflects what was intended. And if there's not a mistake, then the language shouldn't be included. But rather than passing what I believe are erroneous reflections of what we decided, I think that we need to establish that.
That's already been done, though, it's my understanding.
That isn't reflected in this language, in my opinion, and as I'm taking it in the consent of others to at least take a look at it. I don't see the harm in that.
Councilman Stone and then Councilman Kaufman.
I'd be more comfortable waiting, given that there may be an error here that needs to be corrected. So I'd like to wait and discuss it, make sure that it's correct before we vote on it.
Councilman Kaufman.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I agree with having the council have some time just to consider if there's no urgency, there's no downside or prejudice by waiting.
Okay. Councilman Stolberg, any thoughts one way or the other?
No, as long as Corporation Counsel says there's no urgency to do this tonight, that it's already in the existing law, I have no problem. I'd rather wait and clarify than vote on something and then have to redo it.
Okay. Councilman Holloman, are you okay with that?
Clearly, you don't have 4 people. I just feel like we're reopening a discussion that we've already had closed, and I don't understand the point of that, but I will go with the group.
Okay. Councilman Noble, thoughts?
Yeah, I'm in the same place. It sounds like we're reopening something that was decided, but there's no harm in having an overview of it if there's an error.
Okay. All righty. Councilman Stolberg?
Just to clarify.
I have a, sorry, Adam.
Oh, go ahead, Alyssa, I'm sorry.
If we are reopening this conversation, then we owe it to the people who contacted us about the issue in the first place to notify them that we are having this conversation again.
Did anybody notify us, or was this just you reading it?
So I'm not sure what's going on. I'm a little confused as to what's going on. It sounds like we have an error possibly, but we're reopening a conversation that was very controversial and had people on both sides asking about it. So now we're bringing it back without their knowledge. Is that what's going on here?
Councilwoman Stone and then Councilman Bloomberg.
My understanding was that we were checking to see if an error was made in the language based on when we originally discussed it. I didn't think Councilman Bloomberg wanted to reopen the whole conversation, but I will look to him to clarify that part.
Okay. Councilman Bloomberg and then Councilman Holloman.
That's correct. I'm not looking to change the policy. I accept the policy, and in fact, I support the policy. I just think that there is a small error in some language that was omitted to make sure that the policy, as was discussed and reflected in public meetings and the decision of the council is properly reflected in the way that this is drafted.
Okay. Councilman Holloman, and then we'll hear from Joel Fontaine.
I could be misunderstanding this, but this is not, I mean, this policy is law in Highland Park as it was passed. And if there was an error, it should have been corrected previously. This is the law, and we are supposed to be just codifying this for whatever technical detail, correct, Steve? That's what we were told. And then
that's more right. That's correct. What just to give you the history of what happened, this was the ordinance that was adopted by the council in 2018.
After much discussion, we adopted this in 2018. So
Right.
it is the law as it stands.
But here's the glitch, and it has nothing to do with Councilman Bloomberg's comment. The reason that we put this on the agenda at all is we discovered that in 2020, when you recodified the section, this provision was erroneously left out.
So a Scribner's error, somebody left something out, and
Right.
now we are saying, okay, we are going to put it back in. But if we say, oh, but when you do that, I want to make a change, even to cross out something, you are now going back through a process of changing the law. And we should go back and have a whole conversation if that's what we're going to do. There's a big difference between copying one policy from a missing section into the place where it belongs to, oh, wait, and while you're doing that, I'm going to make an edit. That is a change to the law, and we should have a whole process to do that. And Councilman Bloomberg can bring that up and get it on an agenda, and we can say there's 4 of us that want to go through and reopen this law and discuss it. But this was incredibly contentious, and it took us a long time to get there. So the fact that someone left it off does not make sense to me that we would suddenly go back and start editing that, even if they're minor edits, because I can guarantee you nobody remembers exactly what they said 2 years ago. We have to go back and listen word for word and come to an agreement to make a decision. So I would not support that in any way. I would support passing this to take care of the Scribner's error, and then going through the process to edit the policy should it be warranted, and moving forward. Because right now, if there is an error, it's already the law. I don't see any reason to open this up over a perception and not correct the error in the first place.
Councilman Stolberg, I see you. Hang on one second. So Corporation Counsel, I guess I'm seeking clarification as well. If it literally is somebody forgot to put it in, then it is a Scrivener's error. And Councilman Bloomberg, are you okay with us just putting language back in that was already approved and agreed to by the council? We have minutes of our meetings. We have tapes of our meeting. It should be pretty straightforward. Is something missing? If it is, then it needs to be re-added. And it's a technicality. It's not a policy conversation that warrants an entire conversation. So Corporation Counsel and Councilman Bloomberg, I'm seeking sort of where are you two netting out?
Well, I believe it's an editing error, or that it doesn't change the substance of the law. So I don't understand what everybody is so concerned about. If we pass it tonight and we have the discussion later, it takes the same amount of effort as if we don't pass it tonight, discuss it later, and then pass it then. So I don't understand what Councilman Holloman is agitated about.
I think it's a question of potential not remembering the nuances of what was a very contentious conversation.
I understand that.
Hang on. So to that end, I guess I turn to Corporation Counsel. You're the guys who put the words on the paper. So how can we do this in a way that doesn't involve an entire policy revisit conversation? Isn't it pretty straightforward? You have the minutes, you have the tapes, you know what's in there, and do we get a copy of the red line that says, by the way, this is the part that was missing?
So we're really talking about 2 separate possible issues. And first, I want to say, and as I told Councilman Bloomberg earlier today, I don't think that tonight you should consider adding the language that Councilman Bloomberg would like to see added. I think that would not be good practice.
Right.
The only question that you should consider is whether you approve the ordinance as it was originally drafted in 2018 and give an opportunity for Councilman Bloomberg to make the amendment later, or hold off on approving the ordinance that's on tonight's agenda and take it all at one time. It is indeed the same amount of time. I suppose in retrospect, as I'm thinking through it and listening to the arguments made, it may be best to, and simplest in its finest form, to simply adopt the ordinance that was originally scheduled to be adopted tonight, which does exactly what you did in 2018. And if there was an error in the way in which the 2018 ordinance was ultimately drafted, Councilman Bloomberg has the opportunity, and I think has support from the council, to to put that on the table and have a discussion about that.
That's fine.
Okay, that would be my preference. My preference
Okay.
would be to have a motion to approve 13,
As is.
to take action, as is, to take action, and then Councilman Bloomberg, do us a favor and highlight the area that you're concerned about. We can set aside 15 minutes at a committee of the whole meeting, or look at it via email and see if there's any substantive issues that need to be addressed in the codification. Councilman Stolberg and then Councilman Holloman.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate Corporation Council clarifying that for us, because I was not, in my understanding, was not in favor of reopening the discussion or changing the policy. The way I understood Councilman Bloomberg was that he felt that what was asked to be approved tonight didn't accurately reflect the policy that we all agreed upon in the language that's in front of us tonight. So as long as the most important thing in my mind is, I agree with Councilman Holloman and Councilman Noble, this is not, in my mind, to reopen the policy discussion that was contentious, that was talked about and agreed upon. The important thing to me is that we get it right, and what was agreed upon is what is written and transcribed correctly. So I'm fine with either way, so long as that's what comes through in the end.
Thanks. Councilman Holloman.
I would like to move to approve the adoption of this item number 13.
Is there a
I'll
second?
second that. I'll
Okay,
second it.
Thank you. Any further discussion on item 13? Councilman Bloomberg.
I want to make it very clear. What I'm asking for will not change the policy or in any way diminish the authority of the city council to reduce or terminate a teardown delay, which is what these sections are about.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion. We have a second. Councilman Holloman.
I just wanted to state that I did not appreciate the characterization that you made of me personally, Councilman Bloomberg, and I hope that you would resist doing that in the future. If I speak forcefully, it doesn't mean I'm agitated, and I very much resent your characterization.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Councilman Stolberg,
Aye.
Councilwoman Stone,
Aye.
Councilman Kaufman,
Aye.
Councilman Bloomberg,
Aye.
Councilman Noble,
Aye.
Councilman Hellman,
Aye.
Mayor Rotering.
Aye. 7 ayes, no nays. Item 13 is approved. Thank you for a lively conversation. We're moving on to item 17, which is consideration of a motion to extend the emergency declaration for the city of Highland Park, originally entered on March 14th, 2020. The pandemic is still with us. I am seeking a motion on item 17.
So moved.
Second.
Excuse me, Mayor.
Can you
Just
clarify
next
that
council
the
meeting.
motion, Mayor, would be to extend it to the adjournment of the next Highland Park City Council meeting, which
September 14th.
September 14th.
That
Thank
would
you.
be my motion. Thank you, Steve.
Second.
Okay. Councilman Holloman.
Gita, perhaps could you just outline for the public why it is important to extend this emergency declaration, because people may not realize that there are actual needs that go with this?
Thanks,
Yes.
Councilman Holloman.
Absolutely. Good question, Councilman Hellman. So all the emergency declarations are posted on the city's website if individuals are interested in reviewing those, as well as the governor's orders. But really, first and foremost, the primary purpose of extending the emergency declaration for our operation is it gives us flexibility as we manage our staff and deploy them. So if we have, for example, an entire ship fire that, heaven forbid, gets COVID and we need to redeploy our resources differently, it gives us that flexibility outside of our collective bargaining agreements. So that's the primary reason why it benefits us mostly.
Okay, thank you. I believe we have a motion. We have a second. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Councilman Stolberg,
Aye.
Councilwoman Stone,
Aye.
Councilman Kaufman,
Aye.
Councilman Bloomberg,
Aye.
Councilman Noble,
Aye.
Councilman Hellman,
Aye.
Mayor Rotering.
Aye. 7 ayes, no nays. Item 17 has been approved through the adjournment of our next council meeting. Is there any business from the council? Seeing none, business from city staff.
Not at this time, Mayor.
Great. We will be moving to our committee of the whole. May I have a motion to adjourn the city council meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And the city council meeting is adjourned. I would now like to call to order the committee of the whole for the city council of the city of Highland Park, Illinois, August 24th, 2020. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilman Stolberg,
Here.
Councilman Stone,
Here.
Councilman Kaufman,
Here.
Councilman Bloomberg,
Here.
Councilman Noble,
Here.
Councilman Hellman,
Here.
Mayor Rotering.
Here, we have a quorum. May I have a motion to approve the minutes from the June 22nd and July 13th, 2020 committee of the whole meetings?
So moved.
Second as amended.
Thank you. Will the clerk call the vote for approval of the minutes?
Councilman Stolberg,
Aye.
Councilwoman Stone,
Aye.
Councilman Kaufman,
Aye.
Councilman Bloomberg,
Aye.
Councilman Noble,
Aye.
Councilman Hellman,
Aye.
Mayor Rotering.
Aye, 7 ayes, no nays, and the minutes are approved. We will move on to our scheduled business. Our first item for discussion is the local streets new sidewalk installation guidelines update, and Director Kenna Peretti will present updates to the sidewalk installation guidelines. They were last discussed at the March 9th, 2020 committee of the whole meeting. The updated guidelines were emailed to the City Council on August 7th, and background and highlights are reflected in the staff's memorandum. The guidelines were reviewed by representatives from Public Works, Community Development, the City Manager, and Corporation Council. Residents were notified of this meeting for their information, and as you've noticed, we have received several comments on both sides of the issue. Welcome, Director Kenna Peretti.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the council, as you just relayed, I'll share the screen so that we all can see the PowerPoint. All right, there you go. All right. Again, welcome. So this will be just an update on what was discussed on the March 9th. And as I'm going through, please feel free. Again, there should be no surprises here. We had a good discussion on March 9th. We are just
Hard to hear, Ramesh. Could you speak
sorry. Can you hear
closer
now?
to the microphone or something?
All right. How about now? Better? A little bit better?
I can hear you fine.
Okay. All right. Again, let me. What I was saying is we had a discussion about this local streets new sidewalk guideline on March 9th. This update is more just to formalize what we had discussed. So I'll go through the slides at any time. Please, if you have any questions, please feel free to stop me and then I can answer those questions. Again, the agenda, just to provide an update of what are the key items that was discussed in this guideline, and then what are the next steps on how to proceed with this local streets guideline. Just as a background, local streets are these what we call like the minor residential streets. Most of the collector arterial like the Clavey, Green Bay, these are most of the streets already have sidewalks, and some of these streets also do have are part of our bike walk plan that sidewalks were installed. So the ones that this particular guideline we are referring to are those streets that were built like before any subdivision code or were in existence for a long time and did not have any sidewalks. Again, the update, I'll go over some major revisions, which is in the next slide. These are some of the key ones that we discussed. Again, we changed it from a policy to a guideline. As Corporation Council reminds us every time that City Council does have the ultimate authority to make changes or revisions. So these are just a guideline to come up with a recommendation for the City Council to approve a sidewalk. So these are just a guideline. We did revise the affected owners. Affected owners are defined as the ones who have the sidewalk on their front yard or on their frontage. We did revise it from 75% to 51%, simple majority. The other items stay, the one survey per lot. So one lot will get one survey response. We did change this to one of the residents did ask this particular question. So yeah, we did had this discussion. So if somebody does not respond, we will assume that they are in favor of the sidewalk. Again, that was this one particular, the next one, undelivered mail. We didn't have a lot of discussion, but we wanted to clarify this for the council. Basically, sometimes what happens is we do mail we'll do a survey, we'll mail the survey and we get it back. These surveys are returned back as undelivered mail. In that particular case, we agreed that maybe we'll just remove that lot from the total count so that it does not sway one way or the other. Since it was a return mail or undelivered mail, we plan to take that particular server or that lot from the total count. We did discuss about the project prioritization criteria, which I'll also go through pretty soon. And we discussed that once we have a positive survey of a sidewalk, that particular sidewalk installation will be part of our 10-year capital program that we discuss each year. We'll prioritize it, we'll budget it, and then it'll be included in our 10-year capital plan. In terms of how the process works, it is initiated by a lead resident volunteer. That resident can be within the neighborhood, who lives in the neighborhood, and then the first item is to get a notice of intent to just notify us. This was brought up by Councilman Kaufman in one of the comments. If you look at our guideline, that step 1.1 and 1.2 got reversed. So basically, the resident will provide us with a notice of intent. It could be an email or a letter saying that I plan to conduct this survey on this block for sidewalk, and from there now we know that the resident has 90 to 120 days to get that support. And once that support is received, then city will proceed to step 2 of, again, conceptual drawing and have an open house. And then city will then send a survey just to reaffirm that, okay, the residents are still interested, because we will have some more information with regards to, the impacts to the frontage.
So Ramesh?
Yes.
I have a question on that last step of the second stage, I guess,
Sure.
where the city sends the survey to reaffirm support.
Right.
If there's already been a survey done of residents by a resident, and it's shown that more people in the neighborhood support the sidewalk than don't, then in the next phase, the staff is putting in a lot of time and energy and money to engineer the sidewalk. So at that point, it seems like it's maybe more appropriate to do the open house or the neighborhood meeting to inform people about the details of the sidewalk. But doing another survey seems like that sort of reopens things. And we heard some of the comments previously read by Gita from residents over on University in particular. It seems to be a very contentious process in certain neighborhoods, and doing 2 surveys seems to be both duplicative, but also seems like it will reopen kind of that contentious nature and provide an opportunity for those who were not on the winning side to try and turn things.
Those are good questions, Councilman Stone. But as you have heard again from some of the neighborhood, it makes it again I think the council was very direct, or we're very supportive that we want connectivity within the city, and this is an opportunity when the lead resident volunteers ask for that initial support. Unfortunately, we don't, he or she may not have the data of what the impact is going to be. So we don't know about the number of trees. We don't know regarding how the driveway slopes going to be impacted. There are a lot of uncertainties when that initial resident volunteer, when he tries to get that survey. So to provide some context to them, that's why we don't do the final engineering. We just do the conceptual engineering. Again, this is not a, this is not a full-blown final design, rather than a simple survey and then show a proposed alignment. And we will do some work regarding the trees and the condition of the trees, and then have an open house so that now the residents do have, for the same reason you just mentioned, Councilman Swan, that now they have full information. And if the sidewalk is still supported by 51, we did reduce the threshold. That way, now they have the information with them. Again,
Director Kamaparati, if I may just jump in and support what the director has said. Councilman Stone, having sat through in the process that previously existed on University, I saw the benefits of the second survey, and they're really twofold. One, it occurs after more information has been presented to the neighbors, as Ramesh has just indicated, and they're better informed by the time of the second survey. But even more important than that, this second survey, which is going to be the one that we base a lot of our ultimate decision and work on, is controlled by us. We're the ones sending out the second survey. We're in control of it. We know who we're sending it to. And I have a lot better faith in it than the first one. So it does make sense, even though it may be cumbersome and irritating that people are receiving it twice, but the second one actually does come at a better time, and it's done by us.
Thank you for that clarification. I'm good with this then.
I know, Mayor, you had a question. No.
That was my question. So that clarified for me. I didn't know if it was survey in the meaning of the survey of the land, survey of the people. Sounds like it's the full context. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. And in terms of how are the projects, because I think the council understood that, this we might have a request of sidewalks. So we did establish this project prioritization criteria on how, when these requests come in, how are these sidewalks looked at? And these are some of the approaches that we plan to take. First of all, if there's existing infrastructure project going on, it is a good thing to have the sidewalk done. Even though most of the time, if it is a strict street project, sidewalk can be done separately without impacting the street for the most part. But if it is a major reconstruction project, then I think it is good to have the sidewalk done at the same time, just to provide that economies of scale and provide minimize the disruption to the residents. Again, if it's a grant funded project, there's always a timeline that you got to get it done. So that might also move the sidewalk. The traffic volume, this is big. The pedestrians and the motorists. We always have. The more people use it, I think the quicker that we want the sidewalk to be installed. That just goes with any other sidewalk installation. Connection, I think this is also discussed at length that if it goes to a school or a park or a public facility, it is good to prioritize those sidewalks at a higher rank. Use of sidewalk by children or elderly, this was also mentioned. All these sidewalks will be built to ADA standards because it is a public sidewalk. So we will build it to ADA standards. And then lastly, connection to bike routes, connection to the bike route. So the sidewalks, we provide the pedestrian and bicycle connectivity for our residents. We also mentioned this, like the street block with no existing sidewalk. What we mean by that is like, if there is a street that already has a sidewalk on one side and we get a petition or we get a survey for the second sidewalk and there's a street with no sidewalks, our preference is to go with the street with no sidewalk, rather than provide with street which already has a sidewalk, solid on the other side. That's what that.
Ramesh.
Let me see where this goes.
Megan, sorry. There's something in the policy that says, in accordance with this new sidewalk guideline, new sidewalks must be connected to an existing sidewalk, bike path, pedestrian path, public facility, transit facility, or park.
Right.
And while of course it's better if we do try and make these connections, one of the criteria you've got here is street block with no existing sidewalk. And as we know, there are neighborhoods in Highland Park where there are no sidewalks, period. And so that, trying to get those sidewalks in, you've got to start somewhere. So there, in those cases, will not be a connection to an existing sidewalk or path. I feel like the criteria that you've got here, which are in the policy that you sent us, are incompatible with that statement that they all have to be connecting.
They'll have to be going somewhere. There could be just, we now have 3 blocks on this very newly busy street. So people at least have some safety. Case in point, the neighbor with the glow in the dark dog leash. I mean, it just sort of sounds like there are certain areas, and we know that they exist, where there just are blocks and blocks and blocks and blocks with no sidewalks, where for whatever reason, traffic has increased. To have an anchor, so to speak, I think may make it more difficult to get something started.
Mayor, I think it's 2 reasons. I think one is we obviously don't want to build a sidewalk to nowhere, right? So, I mean, we can have, if council is, we can add that as a project priority. I think our concern is that if you build a sidewalk, because we do have certain, like the sidewalk gaps that we mentioned as exceptions, we do have certain areas where the sidewalks were built halfway and then left it open.
Right.
How to us, that provides like, okay, now they got nowhere to go. So to build a sidewalk, it doesn't connect to any existing. Now we are putting in a sidewalk to nowhere. And the concern is that once a sidewalk is built in that particular block and you're not connecting, our concern is more of the ADA compatibility. You are supposed to provide a safe path for all residents, and
Sure.
then the sidewalk to nowhere. That was our concern.
Right.
So it doesn't mean that the sidewalk on that block will be taken off the list. It'll be more that we will keep it on the high priority until a connecting sidewalk is done. That was the reason for that particular guide. So it's not that we don't want to build it, just more. I don't think, maybe there might be a couple of sections, but I would say for the most part, at least the requests that we have seen in the past, there is a connecting sidewalk. So there might be 1 or 2 exceptions, but I think we can explain that to the lead resident volunteer that, how to approach this particular issue.
So maybe we could just change that statement. Instead of saying must be connected, say should be connected, or there's a preference if they are connected, or just because the language must seems to be very strong.
Limiting.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. Yeah, no, we'll change it. Yeah, shall be. Yeah, we can. Yeah, we will change that language.
I don't think shall. I think should, because it's a preference. It's not a command. But I defer to the lawyers in the group.
Yeah.
Well, these are guidelines, so
exactly,
it's,
right.
It'll be holistic, and these are guidelines.
Yeah, but we will, Councilman Winston, we will work with the Corporation Council to do the exact language.
Okay.
Thank you.
In terms of the timeline, I think this was also discussed because we might have a lot of requests. These are all, the step 1 is the lead resident volunteer. They provide the survey. That could happen within less than 3 to 4 months. But the step 2, that's where it could take, because once we get a positive survey, now we need to budget some dollars in our capital plan to do the conceptual drawing, and that might take 1 year to 2 years, and then we develop it, and then we do the open house. That's where the entire process, start to finish, could take 3 to 5 years. We ask residents to understand that this is a process. Again, if there is a particular project that is being done, yes, we can move it up, but just a general timeline so that we can set the expectations from the get-go.
So Ramesh, I just want to share with the council the work that we've done over many years of working together that I've heard the most about in a positive sense has been the addition of sidewalks. People in our community have just been frustrated with the gaps and have really appreciated our proactive movement to increase walkability, to increase opportunities for safe exercise, in a variety of our neighborhoods. And so I really appreciate the time that's going into all of this, because I think it says a lot about how you build community. And so we're trying to continue always to build community in Highland Park, and the installation of new sidewalks. I understand, I'm a gardener, people can get fussy, but at the end of the day, you want to connect people and give them the opportunity to move around, and especially during these interesting climate times, diminish their dependence on cars. One question that I have is, do we know what percentage of our arteries don't have sidewalks? Are almost all of them, or are we still lagging? And the reason why I ask is, I sit on the board of the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning. Lake County is one of the absolute worst in terms of sidewalks. So I don't know how Highland Park stacks up to our neighbors, but I do want to know, on our very busiest of streets, what percentage of our linear miles do not provide sidewalks still?
Well, Mayor, I know this is recorded, but don't hold me to that. I would say that majority of our arterial streets we do have. The one street that I can just think of is the Ridge Road. Ridge Road south of Beverly. So that is, we did put sections north and south, but there's a section between Beverly and heading south that we don't have a ADA compliant sidewalk. We do have.
And then Summit up to Old Elm.
Yep, we all have sidewalk at least on one side. And Summit up to Old Elm, yeah, Summit up to Old Elm doesn't have them.
Doesn't have it, and then that stretch of Sheridan Road down by Rosewood Beach. So that's why I'm curious to know, as we move forward with this conversation and try to prioritize where to put our scarce resources, how can we improve it for the most people? I'd love if that's some sort of data that we could pull together at some point. It doesn't have to be right now, but just to know what percentage of our arteries in particular, and if we have the time, then our collectors are missing connectivity.
Yeah, no, we can definitely, Mayor. And as you know, the Sheridan Road is scheduled, so that
absolutely counting the days.
And also, I like to convey the kudos to the city council. Ever since this council has taken over, we have spent more than $2 million on sidewalk connectivity. So over the last few years, so that is as part of our core mission of infrastructure investment, city has stepped up, when it comes to connectivity and providing the dollars to get those connectivity done. So, again, kudos to the council for spearheading that effort.
And I just want to highlight those projects, the sidewalks on the arteries are decided generally by the council, and according to our new guidelines can now just be moved forward as capital improvement plans, not requiring the 51% survey and so forth.
Mayor, I think you stole my presentation. That was the next.
Sorry, one of my favorite topics. Go ahead.
Right. So that was the exceptions. That is correct. That is, as you mentioned, that is listed here. In addition to that, Mayor, any new subdivisions, they're required by the code to install sidewalks. So that is also in. The sidewalk gaps I just mentioned, that is the sidewalks which are built halfway in a block. We will complete that. Those are exceptions. And then, and then the last item, the council can whether local street or arterial, council still has ultimate authority to also approve sidewalk if so desired. But you're absolutely right. Arterial collector, anything on the Move HP or the bike walk plans, those are all exceptions and will be added in our capital program and installed accordingly.
Great, thank you.
So the next steps, Mayor, we will make some of those changes. Councilwoman Stone and also Councilman Kaufman provided. Again, the Councilman Kaufman was that step 1.1.2 to flip. We will make that changes, and then we will bring the entire guidelines for at a future council meeting date, and also communicate to all the residents of the new guidelines.
Great, thank you. So do people have any questions, any comments? Ramesh, if you could end the screen share so I can see the rest of the council members, that would be awesome. Thank you. Councilman Kaufman and then Councilman Stone.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Ramesh, for the presentation, and you and the staff for all the work on this. And I agree with the Mayor, the sidewalks have gotten great interest and kudos from our residents for the number of sidewalks that have been built. One question I do have in light of the public comment that we received tonight about the part of the guidelines that would say that a non-response would be treated as a yes, I'd just be interested in hearing more about, I know we discussed this previously, but kind of what the wisdom of the council is regarding that. Is it that we do value sidewalks so much, we want to try to encourage and promote them? I'm just kind of interested in council thoughts on that in particular because of the comment we received. Thank you.
So Councilman Kaufman, that absolutely was a discussion that we had at a prior committee of the whole. And it basically reflects the philosophy of this council that rather than having what are sort of predisposed anti-sidewalk tendencies, guidelines, rules, and so forth, we're now tipping the balance towards connectivity and trying to make it easier for those who wish to have their sidewalks put in feasible. And I think it was probably close to 20 years ago that I was involved in a sidewalk effort on Marion. And I'm sure half of those people are still angry about it. But, you know, it's one of those things where if there's a need and if there's a desire, it's generally coming from new families with children. Those children grow up and then the cycle repeats itself. So I think we want to be able to move it towards safety, move it towards connectivity. And at least for me, that was the reason why we were tending towards the yes versus the no. Councilman Bloomberg, you had your hand up.
I am in agreement with that. I think that procedure reflects the preference of the city and the city policy for a sidewalk, and places, I guess, an additional burden on those who may be opposed to it to speak up, and for those who are in favor of sidewalks to know that there's already a preference for that. So I think that's consistent with our policy. It's different from voting in an election because there's a preferred policy for it.
Thank you. And Councilman Stone, I'm sorry, you were next. Go ahead.
That's okay. I just wanted to ask what the time frame is, since we did begin talking about this many months ago. Can we get this on maybe our next agenda?
That is correct, Councilman Stone. Yeah, the 14th or the 28th. It'll be in September.
Great.
That is the plan.
Because
Right.
the sidewalks that do exist are really, really well utilized right now. And I'm seeing a lot of new families and a lot of, you know, people with strollers walking around on the sidewalks in our neighborhood. So it's good to see people out and about.
Right. Any other comments or input that people want to share on the new sidewalk guidelines? All right. Well, I'm delighted. Thank you very much for moving this forward. Looking forward to more good walks around town.
Thank you all.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so we were next going to talk about city operations during the COVID-19 pandemic. City Manager Newkirk will provide an update on several programs, services, and initiatives currently underway and planned. We have a huge range of topics, and we will be discussing helping out our favorite small businesses, I believe, as the last item, so we can give it some serious conversation.
Right. Thank you, Mayor. I just want to recognize Councilman Kaufman has his hand up.
Sorry, Councilman Kaufman.
I didn't need to have it virtually anymore, hopefully.
Okay.
I think that's a different person, possibly.
In the participants?
It looked like it was an attendee rather than.
It is an attendee.
Oh,
It's
I see.
the
Okay.
attendee.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. So just a couple of reports on various different subjects. First, just want to.
So I'm sorry to interrupt you. Dan, the attendee, we will get to you after the presentation by the city manager. Okay, go ahead, Kia. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. We just want to remind the public that as a result of the pandemic, our administrative offices of all of our buildings remain closed for walk-in traffic, but all of our staff certainly is working. So we're checking emails, we're conducting inspections, so people can contact us via email, online, or drop off, or if it's absolutely necessary, we will have face-to-face meetings. But again, we're trying to minimize exposure just to keep everyone healthy and safe, the public as well as our employees. So our website is being updated on a daily basis. So if people have any questions, please feel free to contact us at any time. In May, our clerks division, which is led by our assistant city manager, Rob Sabo, Ashley Pelbitska, who's our deputy clerk, and Blanca Berlanga. They prepared procedures so we can continue to resume administrative hearings in a virtual environment. So I just want to compliment them. They have really done an outstanding job taking this robust program and putting it in a virtual environment and working very closely with our legal team at Elrod Friedman. So right now, if an individual receives a citation and it's heard through our administrative hearing process, they have several different options. Certainly they have the ability to pay it, but if they would like to contest it, they can contest violations by mail or email. There's a virtual video option where they could be seen in a virtual environment, just like the one that we're in now. And then depending on the gravity of the citation and the type of violation, we have set up procedures for non-hearing negotiations with the city's prosecutor. So overall, I think a program that's been running very smoothly. We have made some modifications, again, just to better interact with the public, but all that information is on our website. So hopefully the public knows that it is election season. So just a couple of reminders. We are getting information on a regular basis from the Lake County Clerk's office, and we are sharing information with the public. The Lake County Clerk has reported that they are really working diligently to ensure that all Lake County voters are able to safely exercise their right to vote during the pandemic. Voters must complete an application for ballot in order to receive a vote by mail ballot. So for the November 3rd, 2020 general election, the Lake County Clerk has mailed an application for ballot to all Lake County voters who met certain criteria. So if you receive that, that is not the ballot, but that's just an application to vote by mail. All Lake County voters who did not receive that, you do have an option to request this application for ballot. And you can go to Lake County's website, which is www.lakecountyil.gov. Just as a reminder, voting by mail is safe and it is confidential. Lake County Clerk is working on details of establishing postage-free, secure ballot drop boxes throughout the county. In addition to people can use the regular mail. So more information about those drop boxes will be shared with the public as soon as we get them from Lake County. Also want to just thank Lake County because we have been working with them to find an alternate location to move early voting from the police department to an alternate site. So they have approved relocation of early voting to the Highland Park Country Club just for this upcoming election. And that really, again, you know, with the police department, we're trying to minimize the amount of foot traffic that goes into the police department for the safety of everyone involved. The country club provides a lot of different options and just more space for everyone as well as parking, which we know has been problematic with early voting in the past and limited public parking at the police department. So those plans are currently underway and further information will be forthcoming. So let me just share a couple of important dates, and then we're using all of our communication modalities as well to share this information with the public. So drop boxes will be available at several locations within the county when vote by mail begins September 24th. Voters may track their ballot by calling the Lake County Clerk or by logging into Voter Power, again, starting on September 24th. In order to vote by mail, voters must return the completed application for ballot to the Lake County Clerk by 5 p.m. on October 29th. And early voting is for the time period of October 16th to November 2nd. So if you got all those dates, that's great. If not, again, they're on the Lake County website, or we'll have them on our website as well.
So can we have a dedicated web page on our website that's easily accessible from the home page? Because there is significant interest and concern this year about how to vote. And I recognize that it's the Lake County Clerk's responsibility, but I think if we can amplify what their data points are, people will really appreciate it.
Absolutely. We'll put that as a news brief, so it'll be on the front page of our website.
Super. Thank you. Councilwoman
Can
Stone,
I-
I saw your hand up.
And then Mayor, can I ask something?
Whether- I'm wondering whether we could have somebody from the county speak perhaps briefly at a future council meeting, just to lay out some of this information as well, like we did with the Lake County Health Department. If that would be
Sure, that's an interesting point. Just another way to reach people. But I think we definitely need to have the summary with the dates and the locations, and not just a link to the county clerk's website. I think we need our own.
Oh, we will, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councilman Noble.
Thank you, Mayor. And Councilwoman Stone, I think it's a really great idea, but I want to be very careful in whatever we put on our page. I don't want to summarize what they do, because then if we get it wrong, or we put it out there, it becomes information from the city and it encourages more calls to us and less to them. I'd like to have a dedicated page, but make sure it literally has the link to Lake County Voter Power, and let them get, frequently asked questions. If we want that, let them do it and we'll amplify it. And we can continue to put all their information in one place. But I do not want to see our staff recreating anything, because if we somehow get one thing even remotely off, it is on us. And
Excellent
I
point.
don't want to do that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Okay. So a couple of other things. So I did share a recommendation with the city council as it pertains to Halloween. I know my daughter's already making her Halloween plan, so it just made me start thinking about.
It's already on social media. The moms are already talking to each other.
So in light of the fact that we are in the midst of the pandemic, our senior staff did talk, and we do strongly recommend that we discourage trick-or-treating this year. There are concerns with kids going door to door, especially to individuals where they don't know the people. Sometimes we recognize that people don't have to open their door, but there's just a concern with the city saying, please enjoy yourselves and go trick-or-treating, and here are the trick-or-treat hours. So what we are recommending is that we promote other ways in which people can celebrate Halloween safely. We've also reached out to our government partners. The Park District has already started working on some family-friendly activities and initiatives for adults as well, that would enable people to celebrate Halloween, but in a safe manner rather than going door to door and being in close physical contact with others. So I would like to just get the council's feedback on that, and then we'll continue working with our staff about some options for us, as well as promoting what our government partners are doing.
I loved what we did on the 4th of July with the virtual parade. I thought that was terrific, and I think there's a real opportunity here for us to kind of come together as a community, either with a costume contest or, show us your stuff, whatever people want to pull together, but some way for everyone to still feel like they're getting noticed for their creativity and the celebration. Councilwoman Stone?
Somebody had suggested on one of those Facebook moms groups, like a parade of costumes in a neighborhood. That might be a way for people to sort of show off their costumes without knocking on doors and doing so in a socially distant kind of way.
Right. And I think there's a real opportunity for creativity by neighborhood. I don't think the city needs to organize those. I think we had a parade of, I think, 4 people on our street that was brilliant. It was all organic from the kids. They came up with it. They did it.
Mayor?
Yes, Councilman Noble.
Sorry, I don't mean to just interrupt, but I can't wave at you. I appreciate what you're saying, Councilwoman Stone, and I've seen the social media stuff as well. I like the idea of let these guys all do it organically. But if, to your point about putting things on our social media and on our website, sorry, if we could do some guidelines of, we ask if whatever you do it safely. Here are your guidelines. If you don't want to answer a door, don't answer a door. I'm not answering my door. I love these children. I love seeing them walk around. But let them do it themselves, and we just give them some guidelines to use. And residents who don't want to open their door shouldn't feel guilty about it. And if they want to, when you're not home, you put a bowl out. Give them the hours and say this is when you do it. But I don't want to. It's your point. I don't want to get involved in telling them what they should or shouldn't do.
Right. Councilman Holloman and then Councilman Bloomberg. No, you're just touching your ear. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very hard to say there is no trick-or-treating, because people are just going to trick-or-treat regardless. So, and it's kind of a family decision, right? You turn off your light, you don't answer your door, or, you have a pumpkin with a line through it if you're not trick-or-treating. But I think, and I think that's totally reasonable. People would understand but I think it's going to be really, and shorten the hours, right? Just give kids, say, look, we're only trick-or-treating from, 5 to 7, and that's the end of it. And then people have a reason and there's a structure, but I don't think you're going to eliminate it. And I think it's going to cause like a whole other like shaming thing where people are going to be like, you weren't supposed to be trick-or-treating and we are trick-or-treating. Like, I just think like you have to let parents make that decision. The neighborhoods will figure out what makes the most sense. A lot of parents just aren't going to send their kids. But I think we can just trust parents to make that decision and neighborhoods to figure out what they want to do.
Councilman Stolberg.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, that was my only concern. I like the idea of putting some guidelines out there, but unfortunately, if it comes across as a city mandate, no trick or treating, I'm sure we're all going to get emails and social media is going to light up saying, why aren't the police arresting these people for trick or treating? We've seen some of that. So I think I love the idea of some firm suggestions, maybe even some good quality, creative ideas. But if we come out there with no trick or treating, it's like any rule, the only teeth in the rule is the enforcement. So what happens now if people violate it? We're not sending our police to tell children to go home. So that would be my only concern.
Yeah. And I guess let me just clarify. I'm not saying it is prohibited that you go trick or treating, because like in my neighborhood, our neighbors are close and I know which houses I would tell my kids to go to. I guess the question is, historically, we say, these are the trick or treat hours, go enjoy, have fun. Do we want to just say this way, we discourage trick or treating from going door to door. Here are some other things that you could do. Or to Councilman Holloman's point, here are the hours and here are the guidelines. Please be safe.
Councilman Holloman and then Councilman Kaufman.
Yeah, I would just put some more words around it this year. We're in the middle of a global pandemic. If you're going to trick or treat, I think you say here's the hours, and if you're going to trick or treat, please do it safely and responsibly. Respect your neighbors who may not be participating. You come up with a couple of words to go with it, but saying Highland Park isn't having trick or treating isn't going to really mean anything. And if we are doing that, then like seriously, people are going to be calling the police station asking to
report trick or treaters.
To report trick or treaters, and I can't have that. Like there's too much going on. People are reporting kids in the park, and it's like trick or treating is going to be like the biggest day of the year. We're going to have enough paddy wagons for that.
Everybody can wear prisoner suits for their
exactly. Everybody would dress up like a prisoner.
So we may want to even say, recommended have a bowl outside your door so that you're not opening your door repeatedly for kids. And the last page of the Highlander, you might want to have the pumpkin with the red splash through it. So here's your sign if you want to throw it on your door and be that person, just to give people that structure. Councilman Kaufman.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I agree with that, what you said in terms of that approach. I just think it's important also we don't send mixed messages, that we urge everyone to be so careful and cautious and then just say, do whatever you want on Halloween.
Right.
So, and if we can create an additional contest, like a costume contest, so we can help the vibrancy of the community that way, or coordinate with the park district closely with what they're doing and not step on their toes, that would be good. But I think there's a way to kind of strike a balance here so we don't totally throw cold water in the whole thing, but also still acknowledge and get people to try to respect the guidelines as much as possible in terms of safety.
Right. Do we need to reach out to our businesses? I know they have the CBD trick or treating. I think that, I don't know.
We're not approving any of those types of special event permits that would gathering of that nature, which is really difficult to physically distance.
Right. Councilwoman Stone.
I like this plan, especially the language that Councilman Holloman suggested of please respect your neighbors who choose not to participate. That gives everyone the ability to make their own choice for what works for them.
Right.
Okay, great. Thank you for that feedback. And then the last is we wanted to just give a status report on the public way right-of-way permits and associated permit activity.
Before you jump into that, I think you wanted to report on the CARES Act coronavirus relief funds.
Oh, sure. Yes. And I have certainly communicated with the City Council on the status of our applications. So for the first round of funding, so as a reminder, the CARES Act is funding for municipalities, fire protection districts Funds are given from the federal government, to the county to the state, to the county government, and then the county government is managing those funding resources. So there are very specific guidelines of what those funds can be used for, and it's really only for reimbursement to municipalities and governments for COVID-related expenses. So that does include personnel costs and anything that you may need, PPE, modifying your modifying your buildings, things of that nature. So our first application was about $780,000. So we had submitted that. And so we're waiting feedback from that. And then the next application is due in October. And so we've put together information for that. So we haven't received any feedback on whether or not that funding has been granted, but we're certainly have met all the deadlines and the guidelines for reimbursement. And as the council is well aware, it did require also an intergovernmental agreement, which the city council did approve, and we forwarded that on to the county.
And just to share, in coordination with the U.S. Conference of Mayors, I've been working with our colleagues across the country to urge Congress to look at adding funds to continue to address the needs of cities. At the last conversation, they were looking at cities above 50,000. So I got on the phone and called our two senators and urged them to look at all cities, not stopping at 50,000. Obviously, we're below that, and we still have significant expenses attendant to COVID-19. So the lobbying continues.
So as it pertains to public right-of-way permits, just want to give the council an update, and I do have a couple of policy questions. Just want to make sure that you're comfortable with the direction that we as staff are moving. So do want to just remind the public, Highland Park was one of the first municipalities to have a business development strategic plan. So really for many, many years, we have stressed and took action on the importance of working cooperatively with our businesses to give them the opportunities to be as successful as they can, as well as working on efforts to bring in new business to the community. And so in the midst of this pandemic, our professional relationship with our businesses has really expanded and heightened because it's been even more critical to stay in regular communication with them. We wanted to make sure that they had resources that are available to them. So resources provided by the state or other private entities, loan programs, grant programs. So we have dedicated information on our website. We're doing e-news and a lot of one-on-one communication with our businesses just to help them during this very challenging time that all of us are really experiencing. The city council at the onset of the pandemic did support use of the public right-of-way for different things such as signage. You could put a table and chairs out there as a waiting area, certainly outdoor dining, the fitness establishments when they were able to have classes outside. So we provided our public right-of-way and we established a permit process that was no fee. And I really want to compliment our staff because these permit applications are being reviewed so expeditiously. I mean, some of them are being turned around that day or next day, depending on what's involved in the application. So we are working very, very hard to try to support our businesses to try to get to yes for what they're looking for. So we have processed about 50 right-of-way applications, which includes 33 applications for food and dining establishments. And the others are like fitness or office or other types of businesses. The permits, we have suggested that they are good until Sunday, November 1st. And a couple of weeks ago, we sent surveys out to all of our businesses. Not that we're not going to continue to offer the public right-of-way, because we are, but we just wanted them to start thinking about fall and winter. How is the use of the public right-of-way going to look different when it starts snowing, when it gets cold? And so if they're looking at heating elements, or if they are looking at either putting more things outside or taking things away, we just want to make sure that they are staying in communication with us, giving us applications to amend their right-of-way permit, or if they don't have one currently and want one, submit another application. And then we'll—
Rita, if I could interrupt you, I know Councilman Noble is now in the attendee room and wants to be let back into the meeting. And Dan, the attendee, has left the meeting. So Just wanted to, whoops, she was there and now she's gone again. Okay, there you go.
Yeah, I promoted her.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. That's all right. So again, Sunday, November 1st, we're just looking for any modifications to the right-of-way permit, and then we'll review those and process those then for the next time period, which would get us through fall and winter. And hopefully by then we'll have a vaccine and we'll be in phase 5. There are two notable areas that I did want to talk about this evening, Roger Williams and specifically Norton's, which is located at 1905 Sheridan Road, as everybody knows, just north of Central. So Friday, May 29th, marked the first day of phase 3. And as part of that transition, if you recall, the state, I think like on a Friday, put together guidelines, sent them out to everyone and said, here are the guidelines that businesses can adhere to as we're in phase 3. And so as a staff, we worked diligently over the weekend and really in a matter of a couple of days, put together this plan so we can best support our businesses. And so we did pursue a couple of road closures. We had closed Roger Williams from Burton to Pleasant, and we closed Sheridan Road from Central to Park. And the idea was we identified these outdoor spaces that were public right-of-way where there were several restaurants in the area, and we would have businesses in the area. Ideally, their guests would be able to take food into this open area, bring their own chairs, and have picnic areas. So in the Roger Williams area, as evidenced today, it has overall been very well received. The businesses enjoy it, the customers like it. So we've been featured in a number of papers, great feedback on social media. So overall, in terms of the experience of that outdoor dining area, it's been very, very positive. Sheridan Road, we were surprised that even as we were doing, the day that we were doing that road closure and we had the Jersey barriers going out there, the restaurants, except for one, no one wanted that road closed. The businesses didn't support it. The restaurants didn't support it, except for Norton's. So we ended up scaling back. We opened back up that roadway. And again, we continued working one-on-one with businesses. And the Norton site plan right now consists of use of public right-of-way of taking the parking spaces in front of Norton's and the adjacent business with fine timing. So those parking spaces have outdoor dining. There are tables in front of Norton's and there are tables to the south. We have told all of our businesses that wish to use public right-of-way that's outside of their footprint that they should reach out to their neighboring business and just ask for their permission to use that public right-of-way that's in front of the other business. And the neighboring business with fine timing had expressed a concern with dining tables outside of his business. So the current plan right now just has tables in the parking spaces, tables in the public right-of-way, the sidewalk area, maintaining, of course, safe thoroughfare, and then tables in front of the office building to the south of Norton's. So as we move forward into what I'll say the application for fall and winter that would start on November 2nd, our recommendation as staff is to continue to allow the current use of the public right-of-way, so where it is right now, and allow Norton's to use the public right-of-way in front of Swiss Fine Timing, but after that business has closed, which starts at 5 o'clock. So that would address the concern of the business that would block that business while they're in operation, but it gives some flexibility to this restaurant to be able to have some additional tables out there to best serve their customers in light of limitations with interior dining. Norton's is looking, similar to other establishments, looking to tent that area in the fall and have outdoor heaters. And so we will make sure that all the tents and heating elements, everything complies not only with building and fire codes, but we're awaiting feedback from the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity that is putting together guidelines for the entire state of Illinois. And so we'll make sure that all the businesses adhere to those guidelines as well. But our recommendation is that if a tent is pursued, that it only be over the Norton's property, not over the neighboring properties. So just looking for the council's feedback on that. And then if I could, before I just open it up to you, just a couple of options, other options that we have explored and talked about. So there was a consideration to close a portion of Sheridan Road and have one-way traffic, kind of like a one-way bridge. So that was an option that we've explored, but especially as we get into fall and winter, there are concerns and we believe liabilities with closing a portion of the roadway, especially as you start taking a look at snowplow operations, cars intentionally or unintentionally driving into seating areas. So the more preferred option is really just to get people off of the thoroughfare. They could look at an option into the alley. We could work with them along that, or again, just putting more tables in the public right of way, but still keeping the separation as required by the state.
So I have a couple of questions pertaining to Norton's. One, have we reached out to the Swiss Fine Timing owner in terms of this after 5 option? And two, does Norton's have space? I thought they did in the back, like a patio where they could also potentially expand their footprint.
So yes, the neighboring business owner does not, at any time, he does not support tables in front of his business. His indication, his response is that even when he is closed, because he's an high-end business, it's important just to have those clear lines of sight, even when he's not open, because it lets drivers know where he is. So he does not support it. But again, as we try we're trying to balance, the business requests, and obviously given the fact that we are operating in a pandemic and trying to keep these restaurants, which is a different type of establishment than others, trying to make them as successful as possible in light of the times.
And what about the option of going out the back or using the alley?
Mayor, if you give me one moment, let me just take a look at the map.
I can see you, Bloomberg and Stolberg. I do want to hear from the city manager first. Thanks.
I have my hand raised too. I don't know. Are we raising blue hands or no?
I don't seem to
I'll
see
just do
the
this
hands,
one.
but
right.
Thank you. All right.
We can look at that. I'm sorry, I don't have that answer right now.
Okay. Thank you. Well, perhaps Bloomberg, Stolberg, or Holloman do. So we'll start with Tony, then Adam, then Michelle. I'm not hearing you as you are muted. Thank you.
Sorry about that. The area behind Norton's is a very small alcove with 1 or 2 four tops. I think just one. It's quite tiny, and then it continues.
And then isn't there a parking lot though?
Well, the parking lot is well past that. There is a parking area with a couple of spaces. My question, and I talked to the city manager about it briefly, I don't think the alley is a problem. I don't think it represents a unique safety issue. Its main value would be during the daytime, probably, just as the circular access that's generally existed from the Sheridan Road area out to Central and around to the parking lot. But in the evening, I think my understanding is it's perfectly okay to use the alley. It keeps people off of the main thoroughfare, and there would be a lot of room there and easily serviced by their service people.
Okay. Councilman Stolberg.
No, I was going to say very similar to Councilman Bloomberg. So
okay.
Councilman,
oh, go ahead. Councilman Holloman.
Yeah, I just want to say that, I can appreciate the Swiss watch dealer, but at the same time, it is a public right of way. It is not their property. And again, this is life or death for these businesses. And, anything we can do, the alley, the front of it, because the problems with the alley and stuff is it's narrow, it's hard to get through, the ingress and egress, and you can't see that from the street either. So I think it doesn't give a feeling of vibrancy and openness and someplace where you want to go if you can't see that actual seating area. So in my opinion, this is a short-term problem for the Swiss fine dining. I think all of the options should be pursued for Norton's, everything that we can do. And I would support the closing half the street as well. I realize that this would be an exceptional thing. We've never done something like that before. We have issues to work around, but these small businesses, these restaurants, they are characteristic of Highland Park. Highland Park without Norton's, like, where do you get a burger? So, if we have to do something that's out of our comfort zone for one winter to get us there, I'm willing to do that, because when these business owners are looking down the road, there is no Paycheck Protection Act. There is nothing else that the government is saying to them, here, this is the lifeline we're going to give you. They are entirely on their own. So I feel like our obligation as a municipality is to do everything we can to try and get them through the next 6 months, because they're looking very bleak.
I hear you and share your concern. I think it's important to reiterate, though, that none of the other businesses in the area wanted the street closed. There are other restaurants that are right there who.
I didn't say close the street. I said half the street, right?
Okay,
So I'm not advocating closing the street off again. I understand that, but what I'm saying is, if we encroach into that street and do the one-way bridge kind of idea that Gita suggested, which is very common in Europe, actually, a one-way, people wait. It's not a terrible way to go. We have barriers, we have things. I'm not saying it's going to be ideal during, the winter when there's snow, and I'm sure, Norton's would understand they have to clear more of the snow themselves or do whatever. But anything that we can do to support these businesses is what I would support.
Thank you. Councilman Stolberg.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to clarify, and I appreciate Councilman Holloman's comments, I spoke to both owners of Norton's in the last 2 weeks, as I think Councilman Bloomberg did too. They reached out to me. The alley was talked about. Their concern is that it may not be conducive visually or aromatically to hold a restaurant. But to clarify, one of the things that they said would really be helpful to them is, when Councilman Howman said, where do you get a burger in Highland Park? Fortunately, we can argue about who's got a better burger, but there are other places. Norton's has played live music for over 20 years on Saturday nights. And what they were asking, and they understand closing the street affects all the other businesses. And when this first came out, our staff did a great job of talking to all the restaurants around for a shared tent and bring food to a table. And none of them wanted it for reasons of access or pickup or blockage or whatever it was. What Norton's is really asking, and I think they'll be reaching out to Gita, I don't think they want the street closed indefinitely. I think what they're talking about is asking for potentially Saturday nights from 7 to 11, closing half of the street, north of the alley access, south of the fine timing parking lot, which is his personal property and not a city parking lot, and understanding what safety measures they may have to help with or comply with, so that maybe they could put a band, out there on the public way in some of that parking and then get some street access. And I don't think they're asking for that throughout the winter. That may be something, into November or as long as the weather would allow. So I think it's very important to respect each business individually, so long as it's not doing damage to others. And while the watch store next door may oppose to it, the fact is they're closed. And it is a city sidewalk, and Norton's has been here 20 plus years and employs 25 people. And I think we should do whatever we could to help them, of course, not at the detriment of another business. We're not saying that Norton's can have these tables out here for their lunch crowd, because then people do have to walk through tables or access to the time to the watch store. But certainly, I think it's important that we help wherever we can. And just to clarify, they're not asking for the streets to be closed like Roger Williams. They're asking really, and I don't even know if it's come to Gita yet, for potentially more of an event permit on Saturday nights for 4 hours.
So thank you for raising those issues. And I think your last phrase was the most critical one. We have a process for asking the city for assistance, and sort of this, I talk to my guy kind of a thing just doesn't work right. You have to go through the channels. We have an incredibly flexible, dedicated, professional staff that's doing everything it can and is balancing all of these potentially competing interests from other businesses. So I appreciate, like I said to Chris Walker, I appreciate the proactivity. I appreciate the planfulness and looking ahead. And if people want to send stuff to our staff, I know they'll turn it around quickly, but you know,
As they should, right?
that's how it should work. It shouldn't be me getting a text from a random person on Sunday going, help out Richie. I think it's got to go through the channels that we've set up that work very functionally.
For everybody. I agree.
Exactly. Exactly. Councilman Kaufman.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I agree with totally trying to do everything we can to help Norton's and other businesses, but I also thought Councilman Stolbrook's point about not to the detriment of all the other businesses. So to that point, I assume that as part of the process, Geeta, is in the past, you and Carolyn and the staff would survey or resurvey the other businesses to vet Norton's possible new proposal to see how that goes over with the other businesses, so we can try to see, kind of look at this, you know, in general as well.
But they need to submit it. That's
Right.
the thing.
Ma-
So, you
Mayor?
know, it's all great to talk, but we got to see something on paper. Councilman Noble.
Thank you. You hit on the point. Thank you to everyone who's been speaking. I'm listening to all of this, and it's exactly what you said. Is where's their proposal? We're getting hearsay from residents. You know, to talk to a resident randomly to say this is what I want, and the resident writes to us about it isn't helpful. And one of the things that, and I appreciate what Councilman Holloman said about, you know, these businesses, they need a lifeline. They need a, you know, we've got to send them something, and we are. We also have offices that surround these business districts, and we have residential districts that surround these districts. And we do have to balance all of that. So to your point, Mayor, yeah, they have to send us a plan. We will turn it around. We will survey, but we have been surveying. I mean, how much surveying do you want to do? I sit with the Property Owners Association, and I hear from them as well. These are the property owners saying, what is the city doing? And now they're saying, thank you, city, for doing it. So we've got all these competing interests. I think to your point, we've got a process, and I appreciate we're talking about Norton's, but I'm sitting here going, why are we only talking about Norton's this evening? This is a much bigger issue that is citywide. It is happening over where Bluegrass is. It is happening over up on 41. It is happening over Michael's, and that whole area has their own thing. So if we can go back to just saying we have a process and send this out to the businesses once and for all and say, send us your plan and we'll move forward.
Right. And, you know, there are plenty of small gyms, large gyms, exercise groups that are similarly going to be looking for space. They also have a process. So I just think it's important. And again, love the restaurants, appreciate what they bring. They are the vibrancy of Highland Park, but it needs to be done objectively, fairly, and in a way that is consistent across our businesses so that people are getting a fair shake.
And Mayor, if I could, so I do want to emphasize, we are in regular communication with our businesses. And let me just stress for any businesses or anyone that's listening. So if you don't know who the players are, Carolyn Hirsch is our business development manager, is really our first point of contact for all businesses. But we're communicating again through email, through our business e-news, which is proactive communication going to everybody. And then Carolyn is having one-on-one conversations with businesses, with property owners, with their representatives. So there is a lot of communication taking place. These two areas I wanted to bring to your attention because the city council has given staff and me as a city manager the ability to approve these right-of-way permits without going through our traditional process of bringing right-of-way applications to your attention in an upcoming meeting. And again, another opportunity to keep these applications moving so we can approve them faster. So that overall has worked very, very well. These two areas in our communication with businesses, we have had a number of concerns brought to our attention. So I want to make sure that we are on the same page, and I am reflecting your policy feedback and your direction as we are making these decisions as a staff. As a staff, we are taking a look at it first and foremost from a public safety perspective. We're looking at it with a keen eye to sensitivity that we are in a pandemic and we want to do whatever we can to support these businesses. And we're also sensitive to the impact that our decisions are making on nearby residents, to people that are traveling through that area. And so we're sensitive to a number of different factors. And again, basing our decisions on those criteria. And I want to certainly make sure that I'm reflecting your policy feedback as we are moving forward. So the second area, if I could, I just want to bring to your attention and just give you an update of where we're at pertains to the closure of Roger Williams. So again, we closed this area in late May, implemented it starting in June for phase 3. Roger Williams is closed from Burton to Pleasant. Now we've made a number of changes in this site plan, again, based on business feedback, based on resident feedback, based on our own staff feedback, and taking into consideration all those factors. So we do have the detour, because Roger Williams is a major thoroughfare and really surrounded by residential areas. The detour, as certainly you well know, is going through a residential street. So that has presented a concern with the volume of vehicles that are traveling through that area. And our police department has been out there regularly reviewing the speeds of vehicles as well, addressing through education and enforcement the importance of adhering to all the traffic regulations, rules of the road. We are recommending as of November 2nd, so ending on November 1st, that we reopen Roger Williams. And here's the rationale for doing so. We have talked to all the businesses, and right now, based on the feedback that we have received, only Ravinia Brewing and BWB are the two businesses that they believe, starting in the fall and winter, would really maximize the use of that closed roadway. So in essence, we'd be closing a roadway for two businesses. Viaggio's, which is right across the street, as you know, has put together a preliminary site plan. We've seen that where they're using their parking lot. And then the other restaurants in the area are looking at other options. Again, more emphasis on curbside pickup and other options to serve their customers. But with the expense and everything of the heating elements and all that, there wasn't an interest in continuing it for them. Now, Ravinia Brewing and BWB have put together a very robust plan for that continued closure. But as we take a look of that, we as a staff have concerns from a couple of different factors. One, continuing to detour cars through Highland and through those residential areas does bring an additional level of concern in the winter weather conditions with snowplow operations, just increased traffic on a residential street. We are in daily communication with our government partners. School District 112, as of today, is planning to go into a hybrid school model starting right after Labor Day. And so their buses would be detouring, having a long detour to get to Ravinia, Braeside, other schools in the area, because they would prefer not to have their buses detour through a residential area unless they are picking kids up and dropping kids off in that residential street. So the bus traffic also presents a problem. And we did receive a site plan today from Ravinia Brewing that would set forth closure of half the roadway. So it would basically, in essence, take about 50% of that traffic off the roadway. It'd have one lane of traffic westbound on Roger Williams. So about 50% of the roadway would still detour through the residential area. So we will meet as a staff to review that, and certainly with the business owners, just to understand their request and how exactly that will unfold, and we'll provide feedback in that regard. What we as a staff our recommendation for these two businesses is first to look at that Walgreens parking lot, that public portion of the parking lot. So you could put a tent in that area. Again, we can work with them on the heating elements and other tables. Now, it's not as big as certainly taking up the street. It does present its challenges because the servers have a longer way to walk. But it also allows, just as we're balancing it, it allows them to continue to have outdoor dining and open up Roger Williams. We have also looked at the possibility of using that alley behind their business. But the concern with that, because they are abutting a residential area, we are concerned about the proximity to those homes in the back. And so although that is an option, we feel that it's a less ideal option because of the proximity to the residents. But again, they do have options. We'll continue to work with them. But right now, our recommendation is to open up that roadway starting November 2nd.
Would they have access to the right of way of their frontage on Roger Williams, that sidewalk? And you and I had talked about, is there a way to reconfigure the parking so more cars can park? So it's not parallel to the curb, but rather angled to the street if they aren't using that space, so they can at least fit more cars in there if they're giving up the parking in the Walgreens lot.
Yes, that would be a possibility. Yes.
Councilman Holloman.
Yeah, I appreciate all that you guys have done. As you know, Ravinia, this area has been the only bright spot in a lot of neighborhood activities. So I think they've done it right. They've distanced, they've welcomed other businesses. It's truly been a pandemic success story, and we need to give credit where credit is due for creating that space and that environment. That said, it's also been critical, and this is a business that without these businesses, Ravinia Brewery and the BWB, we're left with very little in Ravinia to attract people here. So I just want to encourage you to do everything you can. Just opening up the street without a plan, without a lifeline for them is not, in my opinion, a good way to do things. If it means doing something that's a little riskier or a little out of our comfort zone, closing off half the street and trying that experiment, I would encourage you to err on that side and to do everything that we can to support these businesses, because just saying no means that they have no plan. And if that means, can we push it to December 1st in this case? Because there is no other option. Nobody is going to dine indoors at Ravinia Brewery. It's too tiny. And walking around to Walgreens parking lot, that's a long walk from a kitchen all the way out there. If we can take that front space or come up with some other plan, I just would encourage us to do whatever we can to support this business.
And it sounds to me like staff is trying to figure out the flexibility and also balance the needs of keeping that street open. And I think everybody shares the appreciation and also the concern moving forward. So I don't think this is a no plan. I think this is a let's figure out a compromise plan. And to your point, I think that a lot of elements are being brought into the conversation that need to be part of the conversation, whether it's the school buses or whatever. So my sense from what I'm hearing from the city manager and from city staff is that they are trying to work with the owners of these two businesses. So we appreciate everything that they're bringing to us, and also need to make sure that we're balancing the needs of many constituencies in that area. Councilman Kaufman.
Thank you, Mayor. And Gita, I know you and Caroline and staff will do this, but can I also just urge you to continue to communicate with the other businesses there whose access may be more limited, because we have, been creative in trying to promote some of the other businesses in the area. Obviously, some benefit greatly from it. Some, I think, feel a little like their business is down because of it, or additionally down because of it. So we can just continue to be sensitive to the needs of all the businesses in that area. That would be great. Thank you.
Councilman Holloman.
Yeah, I just want to comment that I think there are very few businesses in that area, when it comes down to it, that are actually being impacted. And you guys have come up with good ways to solve that issue. I think the access issue is becoming more one of like, well, I don't like my street is closed. People want to drive through there. I'm not sure it's a business issue at this point.
So I'm confident that staff will assess the various constituencies involved. And I know that they've heard loud and clear that people value and appreciate the vibrancy that Chris and his team have brought to this area, and appreciate their creativity, and will work with them moving forward. Much appreciated, truly, truly. Gita, what decision points did you need from us in terms of these businesses, other businesses? Is it you'll report back, sort of where are we in terms of next steps?
So I just wanted to use this time, if there was any feedback that you wanted to share, if you thought we were going in a different direction than you anticipated, any questions that you have. But I just wanted to share with you our staff recommendations thus far as it pertains to Norton's and then Roger Williams area.
Do we have a timeline in terms of when we're going to hear from the state DCEO, Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. I know they're the ones who kind of provide the guidelines in terms of tents, dealing with exhaust, dealing with fire pits, dealing with flammability, all of those components that are critical to providing these temporary structures so that people can still partake.
Yeah, we don't have a timeline. We are reaching out to them regularly and just kind of keeping them updated on our progress. I mean, not surprisingly, we were one of the first municipalities to survey our businesses and just to say, what are your plans for the fall? And, you know, Ravinia Brewing had already started thinking about the fall. I mean, so they've been very well prepared, and I want to compliment them on that. Many other businesses, it was a good opportunity because a lot of them hadn't really thought about it. You know, it's been so difficult and they're just kind of taking things, you know, weeks by weeks. And so it was an opportunity to start that dialogue to say, well, have you thought about this or this? And here's, you know, what other things that we've read about. So we don't have a timeline of when we'll get that. But short of that, our building department is compiling information as it pertains to code regulations. So we're going to make sure code regulations are being met first and foremost for any of those areas. And then as soon as we get the guidelines, we will share those as well.
Why don't you and I both reach out to our contacts in the governor's office and DCEO and see if we can move them forward, because we're almost at Labor Day and we want people to be able to know what they can move forward on. So we'll do that tomorrow. Councilman Holloman?
Just one other question. I know you said that our fees were waived for the COVID operations. Is that going to continue as business owners are applying for these right-of-way permits?
Yeah, we definitely recommend it. And then I just want to make sure I still have your support for any type of right-of-way permits. In some cases, depending on what businesses need, they may need a special license. So I'll certainly keep the council apprised, but I am asking for your continued support to allow us to review and approve those administratively.
I know I strongly support increased flexibility in terms of use of public space, as long as we're balancing the needs of the constituencies. Appreciate the flexibility that staff has shown. And I want to be clear, you know, not charging fees. We still have costs attendant to this adjudication process. So that's part of what the city is giving back, is that, you know, we do have staff time, resources tied up. The fees generally cover those costs. So we are giving them a break and not charging those fees. But from my standpoint, flexibility is definitely important and needed. And I'm curious to know about the other council members. Councilwoman Stone?
I agree. I really appreciate the work the staff has done to try and make this as streamlined as possible for the businesses and to try and be flexible, and including waiving the fees. One thing I know that we're going to need some form of heat in these tents as we move into colder weather. And we've talked a little bit about fire pits versus propane heaters as both being possibilities. I'd like to make sure that we look carefully before we allow fire pits, both because of the safety issue of having an actual fire in a tent, but also because of the air pollution that's generated by those fire pits. We're in a pandemic that does damage to lungs, and if your lungs are fighting off particulate pollution, that makes you more susceptible to the virus. So I think we need to be really careful about those sorts of things.
And I think that's where we're looking for direction from DCEO and the presumption that they are looking at what can be done in terms of these temporary structures and protecting the public's health at the same time. So thank you for raising that point. Councilman Noble has her hand up. We just can't see it.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with you on everything you've been saying. One of the things, sorry, you're hearing
Stay to the left,
my navigation system.
Kennedy Expressway,
But what
Wisconsin.
is missing from the conversation is the staff has deadlines they have to make, and we're getting a lot of one-offs. And I just want to go back to that again. We're waiving fees, and then we're basically eating these costs, and we're not, and it's all good. And I'm totally again for it. I just want to be clear. We have been communicating with our businesses. We need to give them deadlines of, please get back to us by this date with the plan. And then the other piece that we're missing in this a little bit is we have business groups that have an interest in what's going on. And one would be like in Ravinia, the RBDA and the SSA property owners, they're like, we have the Alliance in downtown Highland Park. They have not been part of the conversations at all. It's like one-offs, and that's taking up a lot of staff's time. So I asked that if we can, in our streamlined process and getting this stuff done quickly, if Gita, if you and Carolyn can just make sure you're dotting I's and crossing T's and including those groups in these conversations so they don't come back to us and say, oh, we don't like that either, or they're now being contacted by one business. Just somehow streamline it and also give the businesses, I know you haven't heard from a lot of them, and I applaud the ones that have come forward because those are the ones that are going to be here. The ones that are not, they're never the ones that are thinking about it. But we can't say to them that when they come to us, yeah, we'll help them, but it becomes, every one of them becomes an individual problem. And we're not looking at this broadly at districts the way we did when COVID started happening. So I'm just asking if we can give some timelines, we can make sure we include these groups so we avoid some of the hiccups along the way.
Yeah, we definitely can. And I just want to make sure we're in sync. So we can definitely notify them of what's happening. My reservation is just asking them to be part of the approval process because.
Totally fine. Totally fine. I'm thinking about like the property owner that came to us after we did what we did on Sheridan Road and then got a coalition together to be against it. I want to avoid it on going in so we don't get that coming out and you have to redo everything.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you. Councilman Holloman, I saw your hand up, and Chris, I know you have your hand up. We're going to let the council weigh in first, and then we'll give attendees an opportunity again with a couple of minutes if you wish to provide input. Councilman Holloman?
Yeah, I want to support whatever we can do to be supportive, but I also want to kind of springboard on what Alyssa's saying and look for opportunities to be creative. 25 years ago, somebody came up with an idea of putting a Chris Kindle market in, downtown Chicago, and everybody thought they were crazy because it's cold out, right? And, it's become a huge success. So people are looking to be outside, to shop, dine. So at least through December, maybe there is more that we can do than just support an individual business. Maybe we can have an outdoor market in Port Clinton Square or use the space in Roger. Maybe, I'd like to see our business development office. Look, we have tons of businesses going out of business. How are we doing more to support our businesses, not just closing streets and what approach are we doing? Are we trying to attract other kinds of outdoor markets, a winter farmers market, whatever those things are? That's what I want to see us doing, because we need to do something as a community to support our businesses. And, permits are great. We should do everything that they're asking for, we should do, and then some. So I think we have the time and resources available through our business development office and through staff who are working from home, that they can put the effort in and look for some of those other opportunities, that we've come up. We've been creative over the years. Food trucks was a huge success. What else can we do to bring some vibrancy to the community during what's going to be a really, really difficult winter?
Thank you. I'm having flashbacks of the artificial skating rink, but I'll let that go. Who else has thoughts they want to share? Okay. Councilman Kaufman.
Yeah, just briefly, I just want, in case there's any doubt, I totally applaud the staff and Gita and Carolyn for their flexibility and creativity, and just continue to urge you to do that. And I think the touch points you've had, though it's time consuming with individual businesses, especially during this critical time for them and the difficult time, I think is really wonderful. And hopefully that's created better business partners, not only during the pandemic, but in the future. So I know it's a lot of work and a lot of extra time, but I think it's well worth it.
Agreed. And add Rob Savo's name to that list as well. Thank you. Anybody else? Gita, I think you're hearing an interest in flexibility. And thank you. Again, I'll reiterate the kudos to staff for their commitment, their professionalism to moving this ball forward. I think everybody shares Michelle's desire for out-of-the-box thinking and creativity, and it really is quite a balancing act, but one that needs to continue to move forward as professionally as it has. So thank you.
Great. Thank you. That's all that I have, Mayor.
Chris Walker, I know you had your hand up. I don't know, Gita, if there's a way to bring Chris in. And Chris, if we could ask you to comment for just a couple of minutes.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Sorry about that. So I will be very quick, and I guess the only thing I again to reiterate, the city and has been terrific in supporting the conversations with us to date, and we appreciate Gita that your offer to continue that with our recent proposal for the one-way street and partial closure of Roger Williams later this week. I wanted to just make two quick statements on that, and and we appreciate the creativity with the Walgreens parking lot area. The concern we have is similar to the alley out back. It's going to be much closer to the neighbors, where we have had some challenges in the past, and then obviously just the distance for access to bathrooms and kitchen and cold food. It will. I'm not saying it's impossible to make work, but there are a whole lot of operational challenges that are going to make that a much more challenging situation for many involved, including, again, like I said, just being that much closer to the neighbors behind us. We look forward to a future conversation on that. And Councilman Stone, we with the fire pits. I think we are ones that had recommended some additional fire pits as a draw for the community to see what's happening and to see that there is something open that they might want to participate in as a big marketing opportunity for us. We definitely are not intending to put those in the tent. So we'll make sure that anything that happens there obviously is going to be in following state guidelines. So. But we just really wanted to make sure that there's a really positive, creative conversation around the partial closure of the street, and that it's not just written off as a foregone conclusion, because we do think it will make a big difference for our businesses, and candidly, I think the overall success of that whole strip of businesses.
Chris, thank you for sharing that. No guarantees. I know our staff will professionally and objectively work with you and do whatever we can to try to move the ball forward. But I'm a big believer in just because you wish it isn't necessarily so, I'm sorry to say, but we will do whatever we can and try to give you guys the footprint that helps you out the most. Councilman Stolberg.
Thanks, Mayor. Just real quick to Chris's point. I won't name a name, but I went to a restaurant on Saturday up north, far north, and it was a long haul to the kitchen. And you know what? The place was still packed. The patrons were appreciative of the wait staff and the bus staff, and I think they tipped generously. And I think we need to keep everything on the table here. And if it's a little bit more of a hike, but it's the difference between having another 7 or 8 tables outside and not being able to support any business, I think we have to look at all of that and see, what really is feasible and weigh the positive and the negative of each situation, while still trying to help our businesses, not impede the residents, make sure that the school buses can get through. All of that stuff, in my mind, has to all balance out for the good of the community.
Okie doke. Great. Thank you. Gita, I think that's it for the open portion of the Committee of the Whole. And so to that end, I'm going to ask for a motion to go into closed session.
Mayor, I would move to go into closed session to discuss personnel matters relating to specific employees, to discuss collective bargaining and approval of closed session minutes pursuant to 5 ILCS 120/2C1, 2, and 21, respectively.
Councilman Bloomberg, might I suggest that you add potential litigation pursuant to Section 11?
I was just thinking that, and I'd like to do that too as part of my motion.
Thank you.
Second that motion.
Okay. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Councilman Stolberg.
Aye.
Councilwoman Stone.
Aye.
Councilman Kaufman.
Aye.
Councilman Bloomberg.
Aye.
Councilman Noble.
Aye.
Councilman Holloman.
Aye.
Mayor Rotering.
Aye. 7 ayes, no nays. We will go into closed session.
Should
Yes.
have the number that I provided you.
Right. Thank you.
Ken.
Okay, I have permission, whoops, there I am. Come on. I have permission from the council to adjourn this committee of the whole. Have a lovely evening. All right, take care. Bye-bye.